All right, welcome everyone to the October 18th, 2021 Board of Directors meeting for MSAD 51. Thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. Our first item on our agenda is recognition, and I'm going to pass it over to our senior rep, Madison.
Hello. We would first like to begin by acknowledging the land that we are gathered on today and the lands that our schools serve are the territory of the Wabanaki people. As we work together to educate our future leaders, we recognize the importance of honoring the Indigenous people, their knowledge, and their collective support of one another. As all of us Cumberland and North Yarmouth residents live on the land of the Abenaki tribe, we can self-reflect upon what we can do to recognize and support the Native Americans that still face discrimination today and educate ourselves on the history of the land we live on. Next, I would also like to mention that if you are leaving early or not staying till the end of the meeting, please go down to the football field and support our seniors. It's the girls' senior night tonight, and it's blackout, hence school colors and all black, but go show our seniors some love.
Thank you, Madison, and thank you to Anne for bringing this statement to us in, I think it was 2019, and to our past chair, Kate, for adopting it. We have a little bit of an interesting evening because we have someone joining us virtually, Lauren. So we're going to have to pause on, he's going to be joining us at 6:50. He is double booked this evening, so he has been able to find a pocket of time within his other commitment to dedicate to us, so we're grateful for the time that we are able to get from him. So because of that, I'm going to shift the agenda just a little bit and move public comment to after his presentation. So between now and, I'm sorry, so the next one is, I'm also confused by what's going on, obviously. So the next item is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion for September 20th?
So moved.
Oh, that was in harmony. Thank you, and a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor. I'm going to abstain because I was not present. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on. Jeff, would you be all right to do your, we probably can't do that.
Yeah, I can start it if you want, or we can, if you want to start public comment.
Yeah, we've got 15 minutes. So, okay, so I'm doing this as we go here. So let's do public comment. We can pick up public comment after our time with Lawrence. So if anyone would like to approach the podium, we'll start there. Just as a reminder, it's 3 minutes, and I will interrupt you, unfortunately, if I have to tell you that your time is complete.
Are you ready for me?
I'm ready.
Okay. My name is Shauna Mueller. I am a parent of a 4th and a 5th grader here in the district, and I'm here today just because I want to support the equity initiative of the district. I think that it's worth sharing some of the positive things that have come out of this initiative in the last couple of years. And so I was fortunate to be one of the parents participating in one of the early day-long training sessions that occurred a couple of years ago, where there were administrators and teachers and staff and students and community members all together talking about issues of equity and opening dialogue among one another, creating relationships. And out of that grew a project that I was involved with, and another parent, Stacy Koch, and Principal Sally McLaughlin, where we worked together to create a program to bring more diverse books to Mabel I. Wilson's classroom libraries. We also got the support of Foundation 51. We applied for a grant back in the spring of 2020. That was awarded in the summer. And then over the course of last year, despite everything else going on, that grant went into effect, and there were a bunch of new diverse books showing, you know, not just civil rights related black characters in books, but, you know, black families being black families, or being families rather. So I just wanted to convey that that is a success story that would not have happened were it not for this initiative. And it was really wonderful that Principal Sally McLaughlin worked with us and really brought her expertise and teachers' leadership in the school to make sure that that was a successful implementation, and was coupled with professional development, where some consultants came in to help teachers think about the appropriate ways at developmentally the right stage to talk about race with the kids. So I just wanted to end by sharing that Principal McLaughlin shared with me that the feedback from the teachers who participated in that professional development was really overwhelmingly positive, which I was surprised that any professional development creates that kind of response. And I think she was surprised at how positive it was as well. So I'm just going to share with you one of the quotes from one of the teachers who participated, and then I'll sit down and let you get on with your evening. This quote is from some teacher participant. "I think that was the best professional development workshop I have ever been to in our district, and probably one of the best in my entire career." So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nick Whiston. I live in Cumberland. I'm here mostly because I'm the co-chair of the Equity and Inclusion Leadership Committee here, and I mostly just wanted to say hi. There's 4 board members now on the committee, which is awesome, and I am available. It's been really good to do the work the past few years. I'm always available if people want to contact me. People at home, our emails are on the website under the strategic plan, and I'm glad that we'll get a chance to hear from Lawrence tonight. I've just done one workshop with him. It was really good. Not related to this district in any way, but it was awesome. So I'm glad that, Jeff, you're recommending him. I was excited when I heard that. I think he has a lot to offer to help you all, the board and our district, pursue the goals of your board this year and our strategic plan. So I just mostly wanted to say hi. Thank you all for your work. It's been a rough couple of years in many ways, but you all have been awesome, and it's been great to watch at home as you steer our district through some turbulent times. And also a huge shout out to the teachers in this district who are working extra hard. So thank you all. And again, please follow up if you have questions. Always happy to talk to people. So thank you all, and we'll look forward to hearing from Lawrence.
Thank you, Nick.
Good evening. My name is Kim Vine. I live in Cumberland. My first child started in MSAD 51 in 2001, and my 4th child will end in 2026. So I will have a quarter of a century as an MSAD 51 parent. And somewhat ashamedly, I, for the very first time in September, actually stayed for an entire board meeting rather than just listen to the comments and leave. And I hope you understand the spirit in which I say this. It was the most boring 2 hours of my life. I just wanted to go home and be with my family, and I mean that in the best possible sense, because what I observed during that meeting was all of you poring over documents and data, and it was just so clear how big a job you all have. Not that I didn't know that before, but really sitting through a meeting helped me really understand what resources you're working with and just all the different decisions that need to be made. So I challenge other people to spend 2 hours just observing a meeting sometime. The second thing I wanted to share is that when my oldest was in 5th grade, she was beginning puberty ed, and the nurse had a parent meeting. And at that meeting, she said, "I just want you all to know that what we're covering in puberty ed is facts. We're not here to teach values. We're here to teach facts." And I felt myself actually physically relax a little bit, and I realized that that was something that had actually maybe been on my mind, and I didn't even realize it. And the more I hear, and I've talked to other parents, everything with equity and inclusion, I think that that is part of the concern. Is I think that there are parents out there who feel that their children are being taught values and not facts. when the values are consistent with what you're teaching at home, you're thrilled because then the school is reinforcing that and making your job easier as a parent. But when you are concerned that those values do not line up with something that you might want your kids to know, that's when you get defensive. So I am very much in favor of equity and inclusion. I am so glad that my children are learning that here and that I can reinforce that at home. And I guess I just would hope that as communication and dialogues continue, that, that perhaps things can be presented in such a way that parents don't feel that their children are going to learn something that is counter to what they already learn at home. I think I'm out of time, but hopefully I made that clear. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Keith Bublow. I live in North Yarmouth. I have a junior and seventh grader in the district. I also have two who graduated. I'm here tonight joined by a number of individuals, including parents and students, and on behalf of several people who were unable to join us in person tonight, to welcome Lawrence Alexander of Carney Sando Associates. We support the continued conversation around equity and race in our schools and the steps the administration is taking on this important issue. After Jeff's newsletter, his last newsletter, I listened to an interview that Mr. Alexander gave last summer, and in it he made what I thought was a really simple but important point for our community to understand. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he said that it's up to the majority culture to fight for the rights and the well-being of those in the minority. For example, it's up for the majority male culture to fight against sexism and patriarchy. It's up for a majority straight culture to fight for those of us who are LGBTQ. And it's up for the white majority to fight against racism and inequality. It's on us. That's our responsibility. We accept that responsibility. And we want to be allies in this endeavor. So we're ready to listen and learn and help where we can. So again, thank you, Mr. Alexander, when he gets here, for meeting with our school board this evening. We look forward to this work, and welcome to Maine. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. Jason Curry, MSAD 51 Education Association. I've been teaching here in the district for 24 years, all of it here at the high school. And I got the chance this morning to experience something completely different. I went to the elementary school, and I volunteered. I had a magnificent time greeting students as they came to the door, helping hand out breakfasts, and serving them in the library. And it was just an amazing experience for me. I loved every single minute. And the staff that I worked with in that building, it was stunning to see the generosity, the kindness, the care that they gave to every second grader, third grader, kindergartner who came through those doors. These staff members are bending over backwards, consistently, regularly, and sadly, I have to say, to the detriment of their own emotional and physical well-being quite frequently. We had a listening session with the chair and the superintendent and many other members of administration and the community on Thursday afternoon last week. And some of those elementary staff told stories of what they're going through and how hard it is to be in their position at this moment, despite the joy that they get every single day from doing what I essentially did as a happiness tourist this morning. I would ask the community, ask the members of the board, ask those who are concerned about other issues to take a little time and think about the people who are taking care of your pre-K student. Think about the people who are there for your kindergartner, your first grade student, your second grade, your third grade student. Fourth and fifth as well, all the way up, but particularly at the younger grades. And think of what they're doing for your children every single day. Think about coming to the school, going to central office, going in to monitor lunches. Think about going in to be a greeter. Think about doing everything and anything you can to get some of that joy that I experienced this morning, but also to give relief to the people who have been bending over backwards for longer than any of us can remember. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think what we'll do is we're just going to pause, unless anyone else has anyone else would like to speak in this moment. I don't see anybody jumping to the podium. So we are going to just pause for a minute. We're going to welcome Lawrence in a few minutes. Dirk and Kevin are going to help with technology. So your patience is appreciated while we set this up.
While we're waiting for the setup, I just want to provide a quick intro. Lawrence Alexander has worked in several districts in Maine over the past few years, and right around us, Yarmouth and Wyndham Raymond. He's worked in Kennebunk. He's also worked for the Maine School Superintendents Association, given a keynote address to that association as well. He is well known in the circles of equity leadership, and was fast to respond to a message that I had sent him if he was interested in consulting, or at least meeting to talk about consulting with our district. So I really want to thank him for putting forward some time and energy into this district. He has a very busy schedule. Carney Sando is an organization that he works for and has been around for a long time. They're generally a headhunting educational agency or association that looks for independent school executive directors. But they also have a lot of other areas, one of them being equity, and Lawrence actually heads up the equity division of Carney Sando. So I'm happy to recommend him this evening to the board, and you'll have a chance to hear from him. He's going to do an intro and then answer any board questions. There are questions from the public that were submitted as well, and I've given those to Lawrence in advance of the meeting, and he'll touch on some similar themes that he saw through the questions. So I don't know if he's online yet, but I just want to welcome him to meet with the board this evening and hopefully answer as many questions as he can in 20 minutes.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Lawrence. Can you hear us
Hi,
all
good to see you
right?
all. I can hear you.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We just finished up a little bit of public comment. Jeff just gave you a little bit of an introduction, so thank you for joining us this evening. I will pass it off to you, and I know we have a short amount of time, so I want to take advantage of as much as we can.
Sure, and I certainly want to partner in this with you all. I know that Jeff has both shared kind of the scope of work and maybe a little bit of texture. I actually just jumped off of a session. I'm leading Maine's Cultural Competence Institute with a couple of hundred Maine educators who are leaning in throughout various districts around the state, asking the questions about what their responsibility is to the progressive, recursive, inclusive work of making our schools more habitable for all. I lead the diversity, equity, and inclusion practice at Carney Sando and Associates. I really believe that this work around equity, inclusion, and belonging is part of our educational promise. And so I think while there are communities who ask, why are we or who are we to do this work? As the son of two public school graduates and a first generation college student myself, I wonder who are we not to do this? And so I'm sure that the community has raised some really good questions that might be helpful for me to respond to perhaps help you all grow to comfort about whatever is next for you all. But I am excited to consider this work with you all. Grateful to Jeff and his team for getting us to this point, and I know how important your time is. Thank you for allowing me a portion of it.
Thank you, Lawrence. So I'm going to open it up to the board. I've already had a chance to speak with Lawrence when I spoke with him with Jeff, so please ask away. Mike?
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time, Lawrence, and for your interest in working with us. I sincerely appreciate it. Just a really basic question. I would love if you would just explain your process of how you would start your work with our district.
Yeah, so I have a colleague who says that the map is not the territory. So understanding that, Jeff and I and the team have really developed and socialized what we feel like is going to be a good approach to do what I call operationalizing the work. Learning about where your school community is really important. For instance, if we were talking about curriculum, many schools, and I used to work in New Hampshire as an example, a lot of the public schools, and I used to work in New Hampshire as an example, a lot of the public school metrics towards student progress were tied to the SAT. And so what's the degree to which a community reckons with that the SAT as a state standard wasn't normed for a group of students, that is reflected to the students that it is applied in terms of measuring? To what extent have they reflected on the ways in which the AP program don't provide cultural mirrors and windows for every student? And so that is a place that they would be at in terms of challenge. You all know your district best. I would very much want to know what the history of progress relative to these areas of work are, but I certainly wouldn't start rogue, pretending as if the map was the blueprint in of itself. It would really be a partnership with you all, learning about where we can start well, not where we can start fast. So some pretty important immediate community surveying and partnering would be really important.
Thank you. Who else would like to take this opportunity to ask a question? Anne.
Hello, thank you for joining us tonight. I am also excited about the possibility of you partnering with our district. I think the thing that I struggle with and wonder if you could speak to, we have people in our community who very readily can see the divide between, say, socioeconomic class and those issues in our district, but for whatever reason don't find the same value or the same treatment regarding races, and especially anti-Black racism. And so I'm wondering how you suggest we start that conversation.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I will name it. I was in northern New Hampshire, so not equivocating with where you are in Maine, but for state New Hampshire, that's 96% white. I think it's important relative to socioeconomic status. The majority of the students that I worked with, and I spent 10 years as a college counselor, the majority of students that I worked with who needed financial aid for college were not Black kids, they were white. I think it's actually a community that can understand the challenges to access, to equity and inclusion related to socioeconomic status should and can grow to understanding that there are systems and opportunities that are not available to all. And without equivocating about socioeconomic challenges, race too presents a barrier to participation and access for all. So I actually see an opportunity to create an inroads, because these are already folks who are understanding that not everything that's available is accessible. And not every classroom that I'm in is equitable. I think it's folks who can understand socioeconomic disparities, who can appreciate over time how racial divides too present barriers to access. The next thing I would say to that is that folks who are seeing education as a way to lift themselves and their children out of potentially socioeconomic doldrums reckon with the value proposition of education. If you look at any reverse design thinking, all of the characteristics of the 21st century education have everything to do with cultural competence and global citizenry. It's actually, for white students and their families, incumbent in a predominantly white state if they're preparing their students for a 21st century education, for global citizenry, in a community that's bereft of those influences and experiences to not just prepare for life in their community, but to prepare for life out of the state of Maine, which is going to be far more diverse than the one they're in. I think the weather vane on a lot of this points to the idea that we're doing this work for people of color. I disagree. I do just fine by myself. I have 6 kids who do just fine. This work is actually placed for me, and as one who's educated in predominantly white spaces, this work presents a high value proposition for white families and white families who struggle around socioeconomic access.
Thank you. I'm just going to go down the line. Vanessa, do you have anything you'd like to ask?
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer.
Thank you for taking the time with us, Lawrence. My question would be, or just to get your insight on how you have worked with communities. I think our school and our district in particular has a need to really engage the community around these discussions. And during the process that we're putting the work plans together and kind of in the details, and how would you foresee engaging our community?
Yeah, I am particularly open and adept in looking for demystifying some of the misunderstanding around the work. I think, and by the work, I mean the work of equity, inclusion, access, and belonging. There are some who feel, and are maybe too polite to name it, that it's anti-white, that it's political, that it's a zero-sum game, and I just don't see it that way. I think that if you are an educator, and if you want your children to be educated, then you're asking yourselves, what's the value proposition of our education? Is it to prepare our students to stay in our homes? I want all of my kids out of the house. Every last one of them. And do we want Maine students and Maine young people to only remain in Maine? Now, we know, I did a presentation with the Island Institute, and we talked about literally the connection between schools and the workforce. And so for me, engaging in those details is to say, listen, if you want your way of life to sustain education, not politics, not racial divide, is the way we meet that gap. And in Maine, people can palpably feel that there's a real concern about their sustainable economic future. All I want to do is place this work in a place that's practical. So to answer your question, I would really hope in this way to present as what's authentically true for me, to be inviting of all of those questions, potentially the ones that seem insensitive or unpopular, to ask those. James Baldwin says that not everything that's faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And I just think that there are some really good folks in your district who are not opposed to any of the work, but maybe have questions either that have not been answered well before, or they might feel are impolite to ask. But I think not the devil, but the angel is in those details.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thanks for joining us tonight. I plan to steal your comment immediately, where we can start well as opposed to where we can start fast.
I had that circled.
I'll try that out in the morning. But one question to that. So this is, we're a community based of 2 towns. So when we talk about beginning well, your vision, I'm talking about some of the other districts that you work with. How unique are some of the conversations and your facilitation style working in this unique community when you think about different communities where you've worked? Different solution, different conversation. Walk us through that.
It's a good question. So I'll name a couple of practical areas. So take curriculum and take hiring. Let's start there. Each community has its own third rail. It doesn't take long before you discover it, and for many of us, they're well known. For some districts in Maine that'll go unnamed, it was all about hiring. That somehow trying to reflect on our practice, not control an outcome, to see if education might be enriched if we had a more diverse faculty, staff, population. There's some people who feel like that is affirmative action, that is a quota, etc. Real field temperature from the kid from Jersey City. The first black male teacher I didn't have until high school, and it's okay to laugh at the following. I didn't have until high school. He was a music teacher, and his name was Mr. Jones. Right? It's probably not a stereotypical black role or name to have. And he's the only black teacher I had before I got to college. You kind of get the idea, is that when we talk about inclusive hiring, and again, you're talking to someone who's worked at 3 schools, all that were predominantly white, as a college counselor. It wasn't my students of color alone who benefited. There were plenty of white students who otherwise would not have seen a man of color in a role of consequence in their schools. So I then, metaphorically speaking, didn't show up conspicuous by my presence and not by my absence in their future. White kids, not kids of color. To answer your question, some communities, hiring is somehow picking a scab, saying that there's something wrong with us, or we have an agenda. So some it's hiring. In curriculum, there are some people who would feel that cultural inclusion is somehow dumbing down or watering down the educational product. They hold in diametric opposition academic excellence and inclusive excellence. And by the way, many of the current presentations of academic excellence are bereft of women as authors and as protagonists and consequential figures. So even if it was just on sex, it's inherently sexist, much less than on race. And so to answer your question succinctly, in those 2 areas, I am not worried about individuals, as it were. I want to learn about functions, and what functions, in the spirit of starting well, are, I call them easy wins and high hurdles. And I'm not naive enough to think that anything's an easy win, but in a community, what's that thing where we feel like a community's ready, we can start well there? Where can we name and know and be aware of a high hurdle, and then we get there over time? So it's that, I call it that cultural anthropology, to learn about a community first, because recommendations are just that. What a community wants to do is far more important to me.
Thank you. Mike, you're good. Avery?
Yeah, I guess my question is, what does equity mean to you? What does the word equity mean to you?
It's a good question. Equity for me is fundamentally different than equality. So that is either pleasing or disappointing to some people, depending on who they are. Equality says that everyone gets the same thing. I don't believe in that. Equity, for me, means that everyone gets what they uniquely need. So take reduced lunch. Yes, I believe that everyone should eat, of course. But free or reduced lunch recognizes, in a matter of equity, that some of our students, if they didn't come to school, wouldn't eat. It's not a zero-sum game in choosing some over others, but equity for me points the weather vane and the directional arrow to those who have the greatest need. I believe in equity around learning differences. If a student is dysgraphic or dyslexic or has a developmental learning difference, I believe that equity says, and we know that we've gone from pulling students out of a classroom to the inclusive classroom, where students are together, I don't believe that all students learn the same. I believe that they can all be successful. Equality would say that everyone can be successful with the same tools. Equity asks the question about what each student needs. And so you get the idea that I can go on. Equity is not partisan and it's not divisive, but it recognizes that no two of us are the same. What does every student need? If I'm a student or a human being with a physical disability, and you say to me, everyone can walk the stairs, that's equality misapplied. Equity is putting in a ramp.
Thank you. Madison?
What are some examples of things you want to bring to our schools and community to support equity and inclusion?
It's a really, really good question. I don't want to bring anything.
Solid.
I want to know what you all feel you need. There's nothing worse than getting things you don't want. A couple of holidays at the house, a couple of Christmases gone wrong. I've learned it as a parent. So it's really, in answering your question, it's really a partnership about really learning what you're ready for and what's going to succeed in your community. And then any number of things are possible. Examples are, because in my line of work, I do consulting for educators around inclusion, cultural competence. I also do a lot of work around retained search. So I help a lot of hiring communities around creating a process, not that determines an outcome, but that makes a more possible inclusive pool. So there's a number of things we could do. What your community is ready for is very important for me to listen to understand, then partner with you to do. It's that paradigmatic shift from being the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. I want to be the guide on the side, and I need to be able to learn what you need and are ready for.
Thank you. Jason?
I struggle with this topic. Having been brought up, we were taught sort of to be colorblind, be agnostic about the whole thing. So this shift to focusing more on it, I struggle with. So I guess I don't have any question except I suspect we'll be in a workshop together, and I look forward to learning more.
Well, listen, I appreciate that, and can I appreciate you, because that's some real public vulnerability, so thank you for that. I'll just relate to you an experience or empathy. I full-throatedly believe that the ethos behind not seeing color ultimately means great things about a human being. I want to be accepting of everyone and care about everyone and stick my neck out for everyone, regardless of their color. I know and I believe that's what people mean. I can share with you an experience. I have a lot of kids. My daughter, Layton, who's 8, she's a gymnast. And I love New Hampshire, by the way, so there's no bag on New Hampshire. But the anecdote is important, I think, to start our conversation. And this isn't a workshop, but I like you. My daughter was 5, and she was starting kindergarten, literally playing in the sandbox with a little white girl who was just noticing skin color. And she told my daughter, my beautiful brown baby, that her skin looked like me. Now, you'd say the darndest things. I think it was the name of a show once anyway. I'm good with that. I wasn't worried about what a little 5-year-old girl said. And her teacher really righted the ship and was great. But it was the little girl's mother that was the problem. I learned great restraint a couple of years ago. She ultimately, when this incident was shared about what her daughter said to my daughter, I expected any number of empathetic, disappointed responses in her child. She asked, "What's the problem?" She only spoke about what she saw. Because clearly this was a young girl. She's 5, but I'm talking about her mom, who's clearly older than 5, who probably grew up not seeing skin color and difference, and who couldn't understand why her daughter's comment hurt my child so much. A child who would go on to, as many people of color have, we call them microaggressions, have a number of those things said. And so in seeing color, it's not about dividing us, but in that awareness, making it actually possible to knit us together. Not asking anyone to take responsibility for the unique experiences that some of us go through who are born in different skin, but believing that it happens. That's important.
Thank you.
I believe that people who are not, who are differently abled, who are female, who are of different backgrounds, different than mine, I believe that they're having a different human experience based on the way they're born. That's the goal.
Thank you, Lawrence. So we have one more board member. I know we're going to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, no, okay.
Yeah, so thank you. First of all, thank you for your time tonight. So my question is, institutions, educational and otherwise, are a lot better at talking the talk than walking the walk. So they're good at putting out their values, but maybe not living up to those values. If you're guiding an institution or a school district, for example, how would you help them move from equity work that's performative to equity work that's meaningful?
I love it. I think and I'll stick with these two examples. When does your hiring algorithm change? And I'll just be specific because I know it's at least a relevant main example. I didn't directly do the search, but I worked with the team doing some implicit bias training, and they made a hire. You all are familiar with RSU 21. Yes. And Dr. Terry Cooper is a superintendent, Black woman from Charlotte, North Carolina, first Black female superintendent in state's history. That was not an easy conversation, right? Because they actually, as a district, walked the walk. And 2 years later are still reeling from the backlash of actually doing it. They made a decision, though, and I'm proud of them, that they weren't just going to talk about inclusion, they were going to do something about it. And by the way, they didn't fix the fight or rig the election. What they did was reflect on their process to be more welcoming for, and I know Maine culture, for PFAs, for people from away. And so, I know y'all. So that was the meaning of it. I think the other part in curriculum, again, is really going to be challenging. How do we take on that idea of academic excellence as dictated by maybe the SAT program, the AP program, our statements of our vestiges and palaces of academic excellence, and see inclusive excellence as part of it. Now, for me, you couldn't pick a better state than Maine, because look at your institutions: Bowdoin, Kobe, Bates, UMaine, Orono, and Farmington. I know your places. Your highest institutions of education are literally predicated on 21st century skills and habits, on global citizenry. You don't even have to leave your state to find more culturally inclusive, progressive institutions around academic excellence. But I think, to your point, when we're actually walking the walk, we're prepared for the vociferous voices who oppose it. I think if we don't start well, then we find ourselves on uneven footing. I think, succinctly, our work together puts you in a good place and on good ground with good footing to do good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're 4 minutes past our time with you, so I want to be really respectful of that. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope everybody was able to get some good insight to work potentially with Lawrence. I feel very lucky to have you join us this evening, so thank you so much.
Well, listen, thank you all so much. I'll talk soon.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Nice work, Dirk and Kevin. It worked. For his presentation? Yes. I just want to make sure we don't have any more public comment before we move. Okay, we will give you a minute or two.
Should you see if there's more public comment?
Yes. Well, yeah. Is there more people that would like to speak? Okay. Thank you, Mike. That's an efficient way to do it.
I wasn't questioning you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out and attending.
Yeah, you're going to want to go to the DCA mobile to AirPlay, and that will show up on the mobile.
So before we move to Jeff's presentation, I will open it up for communications. I didn't know if there was anyone. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to note briefly that during the discussions we had at the last meeting with regard to parents notifying the district on vaccinations, I probably said a few things that were probably inappropriate, and I do apologize, as I say. I also, while I've got the floor, want to acknowledge the passing of General Colin Powell. He was the latest in a string of soldier statesmen following in very big footsteps of both General George C. Marshall and Dwight Eisenhower. He was also unique as a public figure and willing to acknowledge the public mistakes he may have made. And he was, in general, a very good man. And in my own humble opinion, I think he would have served as a very good president. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Peter, very much. Mike, do you want to share?
Yeah, really quickly, I just wanted to let folks know that on Saturday at 2 p.m. at the Prince Memorial Library, we're going to have the third installment of what's called the Community Listening Project. We held two of these gatherings in the spring, and felt like it was really productive. We put it out to all folks in both communities and had some really great conversation and good turnout. And so we have part 3, and it's I'm really excited because it's not just me now, it's actually a full-on partnership with the Prince Memorial Library, and they're phenomenal and way more competent than I am, so that's awesome. But the topic is on creating a more inclusive community. And so it's truly just an opportunity to come join in a conversation and bring ideas and thoughts and discuss around this topic. So hopefully folks can join Saturday at 2 p.m. outside at the Prince Memorial Library. Hopefully it will be nice out. If it is pouring, we will reschedule.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for leading those and finding a partnership so it sustains itself.
Yeah.
So thank you. Anybody else have anything for communications? Okay. So moving on, we have had our presentation from Lawrence, and then we will move on to Superintendent's report for Greeley Grows Green update.
Yes, I have this presentation and then a superintendent's update, so you'll have to listen to me for a few minutes. So tonight, my update is slightly longer than normal around the Greeley Goes Green plan. This was designated as a formal date for just giving the board a formal report as to what is going on with the GGG plan and give you as much information as possible, as well as some recommendations for any changes to the plan. But I did want to just say, prior to starting, I wanted to also say what Peter had mentioned earlier about General Powell. I think that is something we just found out 2 hours ago, and just want to acknowledge, his passing as well. I think losing some good people in this country in the last few months. And then the other thing, I've had three meetings, phone meetings or video meetings with Lawrence Alexander, and I love all the shoes behind him, and I did ask him about his shoes at the last meeting we had, and he said, well, that's because he has so many kids, they didn't know where to put all the shoes. So,
well, they're clearly sneakerheads too. I mean, they're nice shoes.
Yeah,
so
some of them are his kids, little Eric, his shoes. But anyway, so tonight, I'm here to talk about the GGG plan. We are more than 6 weeks into the 21-22 school year, And obviously, the overall goal for the school year and this plan that the board adopted several months ago is keeping kids and staff in school, in person, full-time, through a layered prevention strategy. And that simply means that we are looking at all kinds of mitigation strategies, not just one or two or three, but as many as we possibly can. And we have implemented all of these, and now you're getting a formal review. And just to review, this is the data and metrics that we have been using since the very beginning. This was board approved, and I'll be giving you more information on all of this data as well. So this is also the advisory group. This advisory group has now met several times. They meet in advance of every update that I have provided to the board, and just about everyone has attended all of these meetings. So this is a well-attended group of people who are serious about giving very serious advice about a topic that is of great interest to many people. And also, finally, a reminder about the 3 pillars that we are working on this year through the GGG plan, which is health and safety, academics, and social emotional health. And I think there's no particular order, especially with academics and social emotional. You could flip those easily if you wanted to. So some highlights before I talk about data and recommendations, highlights from Pillar 3. Pillar 3 is obviously the social emotional health. During the first 6 weeks of school this year, there have been all kinds of things that we could have reported on that are aligned with the GGG plan, but just some of the more notable ones, and just some highlights. At pre-K to 3 Mabel Wilson School, the school changed its schedule this year so that there's nothing that starts before 9:15 in the morning. And that includes allied arts, RTI, any sort of groups where students are leaving the regular classroom setting. And that's for responsive classroom morning meetings. Now, responsive classroom is not new to Mabel Wilson School. They've been using that approach for years and years, but they did some retraining, some updated training for their teachers and staff this year, and made it a priority, not that it wasn't before, but really highlighted that priority for all students in the school. At the very beginning of each day. At GMS 4-5, the civil rights team is again hosting what we call the I'm Your Neighbor Welcoming Library. It's a collection of picture books around immigrant and new American experience. And this is around community building and making sure that all students feel a sense of belonging in the school, again around that emotional and social health. And that is a traveling cart that goes around the 4-5 school. In GMS 6-8, twice a week, advisories are meeting to engage in community circles. This is a relatively new thing around the community circle piece. Although they have been done in the past, they're being done very consistently this year. They're structured and facilitated opportunities where students literally pass a talking stick around, and students can talk and talk about, where they're at that particular moment in time, and also the courtesy of listening to others, and just kind of understanding what it's like, again, to transition to working and living with a group of people during the school day. At the high school, this has been gone for a little while, but it was brought back. Principal Gray put a 10-minute mid-morning consistent school break and snack back into the schedule. This also gives students an opportunity to go outside if they want to walk in between their class blocks in the morning, kind of get some fresh air, and I would encourage all students to do that during the winter, because winter is a great time to get some really great fresh air. And the sources of strength, and this is a photo that's next to it, wellness training has been really pushed this year with students, and it's really around finding your own strength. Everybody has strengths, everyone, every single person, and finding those and emphasizing your strengths instead of your weaknesses. And this is just a human condition, and it's human nature for all of us to find things that we don't do well. This program is around finding things that you do well and not dwelling on the things that you don't do well. Sources of Strength is a program that's being used in a lot of high schools in Maine right now, and we're very thankful that we have this program and we have trained, our own staff has been trained to facilitate. And at the district level, many of you are aware that we have a mental health community partnership with both towns of Cumberland and North Yarmouth. It's been going on for about a year now. And this has been an amazing partnership. We have a group of people that work together and have put on an amazing amount of outreach events and for parents and for community members. And I've linked that in if anyone is interested in this presentation will go out and be put on our website and go out publicly. So these are just some photos of things that have been going on. I think, again, we often talk about the data. We talk about what's next or with the recommendations, and we sometimes fail to see the actual people behind the decisions that we make. And this is just a tiny, tiny example of some of the amazing things. These are things that have happened since the first day of school this year. These are not things from last year. So these are photos taken anywhere from the first day of school as kids are walking in to Mabel I. Wilson School, the functional life class at the high school, getting outdoors and using their artistic talent, to pooled testing and what that means at a primary school, to the Ripple Effect program is a photo that you'll see on the right on the top, to our sport programs that have been going on seamlessly, really, our athletic events, and so many of our teams have really had a great experience this season. You know, whether it's in the playoffs or before, just being back together on the field consistently. We've even had field trips. Those are high school students on the bottom and the center. This is something that they couldn't do last year, but we've brought it back. We have a class that goes to Portland and actually look for historical landmarks and take notes. So it was really exciting to be able to offer these things again. And then that final picture on the right is Senior Sunrise. Madison would probably, I know Madison's in that photo.
I'm right in front.
And there you are.
In the white sweatpants, that's me, right there.
So they got up real early. It doesn't look early in this picture, but you'll see another picture later. They got up early, very early, and came to school on a weekday and to start their day. So there's real people behind the decisions, and these are all related to social emotional health in terms of getting back into a routine, getting back into those more typical activities. Maybe the pool testing one is a little bit of an exception, but trying to normalize the fact that even our health and safety practices are something that we can all do. So the data and the metrics that we've got right now, I've kept the previous updates on there so you can see the difference. We have had no change in state guidance. However, I will say this morning the superintendents all had a briefing with Dr. Shaw from the CDC in Maine. Dr. Shaw did talk about that there will be changes in state guidance coming probably at somewhere around the half-year mark, and that we should be looking for those changes. But that the state is looking to, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, and I don't want to preempt, but just say relaxing some of the recommendations that have been in place for a long time for the last 20 months. I think there's going to be a general change in some of the ways that we're expected to handle things through COVID. So that was a good conversation that Dr. Shaw preempted the superintendents and just said, stay tuned. And I guess that the message I want to send about that particular piece is that, you know, a lot of people assume that, you know, even the recommendations that I'm making tonight to the board for approval are things that we have to live with for the next school year, for the rest of the school year. That is completely untrue. You know, as I continue to go to these state meetings, I know that there are things coming, and I also know that there's changes despite the situation or current conditions. There are things that we'll continue reviewing and changing and making recommendations, and I'll give you examples tonight of things that have already changed here in the district. We've had 15 cases, I believe it's 16 now. We did have another case that came in after I sent this out. So we have 236 individuals who have been exposed to COVID in our district. That's 65 from about a month ago. And we've had 84 individuals quarantined, or 36% of the total exposed. Now last year, you would have seen 236 quarantined in that number. So two things are happening: vaccination for older students and for staff, and pooled testing. We have about 55% now of our students enrolled in pool testing, and we have reopened the enrollment and actually expanded and extended the enrollment to November 1st because we have more parents asking us to do that. So the pool testing enrollment, as of right now, and this does not log in additional folks or families that are opting into pool testing, we have 1,148 students registered, or 54%, and that does not include our staff that are enrolled in pool testing. Over the last few weeks, which is about a month that we have been doing pool testing in our district, we have found 3 pools where there was a positive case. So 3 positive cases, 3 pools. A pool can be anywhere from 10 students, 8 to 10 students to 22 students. So those are the pools that we have in our district. Generally, our pools are much less than 22 students. But we have 3 pools, and when that's happened, we've gone back and retested everyone in that pool and be able to stop any potential transmission in our schools. I think that's a positive thing. It's also positive to see how many pools that we've had in this month where we have had no positive cases at all. So I believe the pool testing is helping our district. Also, this is good information for everyone. There were some concerns about the number of staff that were vaccinated. I think part of it was just reporting and the timeliness and getting documentation. We're a little bit, I think, more stringent in our district with actually asking staff to give us a copy of their vaccination card instead of just sending out a survey. So our numbers have been certainly, I think, are more accurately reflected now. As of October 1st, we have 85% of our district level staff, which is anyone who works district-wide K-12, transportation, food service, custodians, maintenance, central office, any of those areas are vaccinated. I'm sorry, we have 73% in that area, 85% in the district overall, 90% at the high school, 80% at the middle school 6-8, 84% at middle school 4-5, and 83% at Mabel I. Wilson School. So you can see those numbers are certainly up. Some of it is we had new hires that we had not yet logged into our system, and then we've had staff providing that information ever since. So we'll continue giving you monthly updates on staff vaccination numbers as required by law. Student vaccination counts also, again, I don't think that they are actually accurate. Right now, I think they're below what they really are, but this is, again, we're asking for actual documentation, but in October you can see that those counts certainly went up for just voluntary submission, and we're not requiring that, of course. We're not requiring any submissions of staff or students, so this is all voluntary. Students' recommended adjustments, the superintendent's recommended adjustments. As of today, these are recommendations I'm making to the board to consider for this evening. Again, this went through the advisory group. The advisory group met last week and discussed all of these. Setting data benchmarks. Again, the advisory group said it is not time to do that. Dr. Shaw this morning in his meeting, in his briefing with superintendents, also said no metrics should be set at this time, and that the state is actually working on metrics that might be helpful to districts as we continue to look at that, specifically talking about masking recommendations, et cetera. So again, this is a fluid process, and I want people to know that this is not something, yes, we're October 18th. Does that mean we're going to be in masking for the rest of the year? We don't need to be if that is not the conditions that we need to be under. Right now, as of October 18th, that's where we're holding. Removing the mask requirement, like I said, we're holding on that and not recommending any masking be lifted at this point. One specific question was asked at the advisory group around high school students and high school staff. Do they need to be continued masking at the high school? And the answer that we got from our medical doctors who are on that group is emphatically yes, we should continue at this time. Music concerts and drama productions. We have not had music concerts indoors, and we've not had any drama productions for the last 20 months. So the advisory group looked at the recommendation that the music department put forward, which is 25% audience capacity in the Art Center, which is about 130 seats. And again, these are recommendations today. Those are recommendations that might shift. At some point, that number could go up, that percentage, and I would expect it would over time. But right now, we're starting conservatively, but at least we want to have live performances. The music department actually put together that plan and put it forward to the advisory group, and that was, it was given the green light as advice to me to put forward. Same thing with winter athletic events for spectators. We are allowing spectators to be going into our gyms for the winter athletic events. I know it's been a huge conversation. The Cumberland County Superintendents met last Friday, and we discussed the issue. And as a county, have agreed that spectators should be able to go to our winter events, which are all indoors, of course, except for a couple of them, which is skiing notably. And just following the same capacity limit. For example, our high school has 1,200 capacity in the gym, so that would be about 300 spectators. We haven't figured out how to make that work, or if that percentage is actually the percentage that we would start the winter season with, which we have a few weeks before that it actually starts. But right now, we wanted to set a kind of a baseline as to what we would be thinking about. So again, I may come back to you with a different recommendation in a couple weeks. But right now, we want to get the ball rolling so that we know we have spectators coming to our events and we can start preparing for that and make sure that we're all set with that. And these are all recommendations that the board would be considering tonight if you choose to move in that direction. This next slide is around administrative adjustments. These are just adjustments that the board doesn't necessarily need to approve. And I'm just putting it out there that these are things that we've already made changes on. Athletic players wearing face masks, that was made by the Cumberland County Superintendents Association. And that was not something that I'm asking the board to make a decision on because it involves actual players. Our procedures right now, if you continue with this plan, is that everyone is masking anyway. We would ask players to mask as well, even while they're in athletic events in our facilities. Plexiglass in cafeterias. Scott Lynn and I met with the nurses and with Dr. Desai, who's our physician, and it was, I would say, unanimous that it is not useful to have plexiglass in our cafeterias. They have no medical value. I think there was some discussion over the summer that they might have a value when everyone was looking at them, and now there's some more information that's come back saying they really have no value at all. So and actually they're a detriment because kids are going around them. So it was just something that we thought was a no-brainer. Let's get them out. PE classes using the pool. We have not offered PE classes going to the pool for the last 20 months. We have a pool. We're very fortunate to have a pool. And in discussing it, also discussed it with the nurses, but administratively we decided it's time to resume swimming lessons in the pool. We have it, and we should be using it with safety and with, obviously kids being masked until they get into the water. Locker rooms. We believe that we can reopen locker rooms again with safety considerations in place. The locker rooms have been largely closed for 20 months. And this weekend, we will be holding a homecoming dance outdoors. Mr. Poulin, I'm going to give you a huge amount of credit because I don't know how you pulled off finding some dance floor in a big tent, but you did it. So we will be holding an outdoor homecoming dance, I believe, rain or shine, because it has a tent, and it's a huge tent. And so I think with safety protocols in place again and expectations, we were administratively able to go ahead and make that work. So those are just examples of things where we're evaluating things constantly, we're continuously looking at things, and whether it's an administrative decision or it's one that needs to be approved by the board, putting those things forward as they happen. The other piece of the recommendation tonight to the board, and this is for your consideration, if you adopt this plan, you're adopting the RED plan. So the RED plan is something that the leadership team has worked extensively on in trying to put together something and be prepared for those days that come up where we have a class out because they have to quarantine. And we've had a couple of situations already where that actually has happened because we had that prior to the pool testing starting already. There might be cases where we have a snow day. That's considered a red day. In the calendar, there is a provision that says the first 2 days are traditional snow days or weather days. The rest of them are red days. So this pertains to those. And then if there was, and I don't expect this to happen, but if there was a situation where a school had to be closed for a significant COVID-related issue for some reason, again, I'm not seeing that happen, but if it did, we want to be fully prepared. This also prepares for situations where we have, and this is more likely, where we have a COVID-related matter where the teacher is in the classroom. Some of the kids are in because of pool testing and they didn't have to quarantine, and some of the kids are out because they're not vaccinated and they're not in the pool testing program. And how do we handle those kinds of situations? And so this chart is actually an abbreviation of the strategies and then our attendance protocols for all those kinds of situations that could occur. And again, I'm hoping that some of these will never occur, and I don't expect that the whole school might close, but who knows? We want to be completely prepared when these kinds of things happen. There is an entire red plan. I won't go through it, but it's linked in this presentation. You can see that it has a far more detail. It's not a long plan, but it gets right to the point. And it helps our staff, especially our administrators, in making sure that we're staying where we need to in terms of our processes. Sorry, that is not what I want to do. That's not what I want to do. Okay, so I'm going to, let's see. I'm almost done. Severe staffing shortage, limitations on the success. So I want to highlight this. I think it's important for the public to know. I've put this out a couple of times that the success of this plan rests on our staff. But our district is currently operating at what I consider to be a severe staffing shortage. It's not unlike many other districts in Maine or across the United States, and it's not unlike businesses and other organizations in our society right now that are not able to find enough staff. We are in the same boat. The area that we're struggling with the most are educational technicians. We currently have 16 vacancies in the district, and they're all in 2 programs, functional life skills and behavior in our district. We have had to move our staff around in order to fill some of those areas.
What grade level is that at, or is that just across?
It's across the board, all of our functional life skills.
Like,
all
is it
schools.
more K through heavier, or middle school heavier, or high school heavier?
I would say all of them. And what we've done, and some people, you may not notice it if you went in to a program, is we've had to move staff so that you won't see potential changes. But we're still down in those programs as well. But we have moved in order to critically make things happen. And in order to do that, we pulled staff away from other areas in our district. But the shortages, I think, if I had to, name it, it's probably a little bit more nuanced at the middle school right now. Okay. And we have, and part of it is our functional life program at the middle school is our biggest program. Yeah. It's 4 to 8. So some of the things that the district has done is we've hired Ed Tech 2s for the first time. We have not hired Ed Tech 2s in decades in this district, and we just started opening that up. We've hired 2 Ed Tech 2s over the last few weeks. We have hired for the first time probably ever, or anyone can remember anyway, lunch and recess aides for 2 hours a day. We had 1 start today. We have 2 more in the process of starting soon. We have decided to rehire permanent substitutes again. We had hired them last year. We had not hired them for this year and went back to just daily substitutes. And we have opened that back up. We've hired 4 in the last couple of weeks. The Ed Tech, educational technician contract has been reopened just to see if there's any other possibilities of retaining and attracting ed techs. Substitute incentives, we're looking at substitute incentives for substitutes who are daily substitutes staying with us for a certain number of days that we would provide an incentive. Again, that one's in the works. Having students in all of our schools eating in the cafeteria. One of our schools right now, there aren't students eating in the cafeteria. We just started that this week, slowly. It'll be a very slow and gradual plan at the Wilson School, and it will take a while to move, but it is a way to reduce potentially some duty coverage. And reducing expectations around some of our academic offerings. In our district, we have no choice but to triage when we absolutely need to, when we do not have enough staff members. So I think it's important for the board and the public to know that we are not operating at full staffing capacity and that we have tried many different ways and with very limited success. So we've had to go in different directions to fill some of the holes. The feeling the success of that is just starting now. We haven't had lunch aides in place. We haven't had permanent substitutes in place until just now. And we just hired 2 ed tech 2s. So we'll continue to do those things, and we have them advertised, continuously advertised. But I just wanted to make you aware that that's where we're at. And then staying current, the FAQs on our website are very current. In fact, they were just updated last on Friday. And then the Really Goes Green unabridged version is not completely updated for tonight, but will be. And it depends on whether the board approves the recommendations that I'm outlining, and we'll make sure we update the plan. So the next advisory group meeting is scheduled for November 9th, and the next update to the board will be on November 15th. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. So we will be voting on this in a bit, so we will save our discussion for that. And so, sorry, but you're up again for our superintendent's report.
So the superintendent's report tonight, got a few areas that we're looking at here. I'm not able to present this any bigger, I don't believe. So I'm really excited to be able to say this, and we've put this on social media, but, and I know this is only one metric, and certainly it's open for certain questions and discussion, but U.S. News and World Report has been around for a long time, and they've been doing, rankings of schools in the United States at all levels, including colleges. And so it is widely respected as a marker for accuracy and success. So I'd like to just convey my congratulations to Greeley Middle School 6-8. They joined the high school for 2021 as the #1 ranked school in the state of Maine on the U.S. News and World Report. GMS 4-5 was number 8. So we have 3 schools in our district in the top 10. Mabel at Wilson is, the grades are too young to be counted in these metrics.
Yeah, let's clap.
And there is a link in there. This will be in my blog that goes out. New transportation facility. And I'm going to have Scott help me with this one because this is also very exciting. So we have a new bus garage, a new transportation facility at the Drown Road. Many of you know that our old garage was very outdated and some changes needed to be made. So I'm not sure I can get this link open. Yes, it is. Well, I'll come back to that in just a moment. We'll do that last, actually, and I'll go through the rest of it. Air quality testing. Mr. Poulin might want to talk about this one, too. We've gotten a lot of questions, and we put it on our Q&A around air quality testing and do we do it, and I think it's just a general topic that's of concern to a lot of people during COVID especially. We do regular air quality testing. We have for years and years and years. And we do it on a regular and consistent basis, multiple times during the year. So the links to the results of our latest air quality testing, including there's what's called a COVID swipe or something like that. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, there were some white samples that were part of the testing this time, and it basically looks for, COVID on the surfaces in the schools, and that was a white sample that we had done. And the other parts of the air quality testing, a lot of people, we hear from people, do you have HEPA filters? Do you have other things in the district? The real area of concern is you need to maximize the airflow in the building, not necessarily, restrain it with HEPA filters, et cetera. You want to increase the airflow in and out of the building. And so that's one of the areas that we've done. And while the air quality tests represent all the particulates and the CO2s and other pieces, the other thing that we've done in the district too is we've done actual flow tests to ensure that all of the HVAC units are operating at their maximum capacity. So we've got a good flow of air going through the facilities.
Speaking of air, is it freezing in here?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
so
Very
cold.
Oh my
I don't know if the temperature was adjusted, but it's freezing.
It's freezing.
Okay.
That's just how it is.
That's just how it is, okay.
It's
air quality.
maximum airflow in the facilities.
It's something.
All right. Well, it's working
Make sure
right
it's
now.
good airflow,
It's a way to
too.
keep us awake.
Yeah,
Ain't no
there's,
COVID in here.
That's all part, you aren't in any kind of energy saving mode in the district. You're in a maximum
That's a
airflow.
bummer. Okay.
So
Sorry.
That's on purpose. That's on purpose.
it's on purpose. Everything's adjusted to its maximum flow.
Inkwell 2021, the high school does an Inkwell magazine, and they did have a pause on that during, I believe, last year a little bit. And so they, I have links in here in my blog, but it's really an amazing piece of work. Their editions are just so professional. So there's links in here. I really encourage people to go and see that. You can go to the high school website and look at it. Great work to the students at the high school who made sure that they were bringing this back this year and didn't let it go by the wayside. And our advisors, Susan Inman and Bobby Livingston, our teachers here that have been advising this group for a number of years. Ripple effect. I know that anyone with students in 7th and 8th grade already know this, but the middle school 6-8, after not being able to do that last year, was able to offer not the overnight trip that we usually do, but at least daytime trips. And the 8th graders, current 8th graders, missed that last year. It's a 7th grade program, and able to get the 7th and 8th graders out on Cow Island. Mari Trebilcock and Jason LaRiviere were really instrumental, along with our coordinators that go out, as well our staff coordinators and all of the teachers that went out with students to make that program work. And we're really grateful to the Ripple Effect program. There's a lot of photos that the middle schools released, and they're all in this blog as well. But it's amazing and truly, I think, wonderful to see these activities back at the middle school and having all of our students participate in those. And again, these will be on my blog that goes out tomorrow or Wednesday. The Daphne Sprague Diversity Collection. Daphne Sprague was an educational technician. She passed away about a year ago. And one of the tributes to Daphne, who was a huge supporter of books, of diversity, of just anything to do with students and building kids up, there was a team at the middle school who put together the Daphne Sprague Diversity Collection at the GMS Library. And it's a wonderful collection of books that are on display right now, but also will be cataloged throughout the library after the display goes away. And all of the books have a sticker that says the Daphne Sprague Diversity Collection. So it's a wonderful tribute to Daphne. She's a wonderful woman. Egg drop at the middle school. This is something that is an annual ritual, and I don't think it happened last year. I don't believe it did. But 6th grade students in science create a wonderful creation where they don't want the egg to drop as they release it from the top of the balcony. I had a chance to go over and watched a number of these fall, and most of the eggs survived.
How did your egg do?
I didn't do one, but I watched the kids as they were kind of, it was kind of fun, and here's kids watching. I took a picture of kids taking a picture of the event because it was kind of fun to watch their reactions, like, oh, what do you think? Did that one break or not? And just kind of guess. And then finally, I mentioned this earlier, but senior sunrise is a great photo of just kids getting up really early and going and watching the nice sky and beginning their day. And a lot of the members of the class of 2022 have this experience. And again, these are all kind of things that we're starting to get back into some more typical events and activities that the district is kind of known for in our district. So it's really nice to highlight some of the things happening, not all of them. We have so many. And I want to go back very quickly, and this is Scott's favorite part, is to look at the bus garage. Scott and I actually did a tour of the facility at one point, probably a few weeks ago, and took a look at, and we encourage board members, if they'd like to do that, we can arrange for you to have a tour of the new transportation facility, which just opened for occupancy.
We'll put them in the bus and go through.
Oh, we should put them in the bus. We went in the bus to see it. I'll show you that in a minute. It's housed with the same building as the Town of Cumberland Public Works. I want to thank the Town of Cumberland for partnering with us on this important project. So we were able to pool resources and funds to modernize the transportation office. And you'll see Scott there with Phil Blake, who's in the middle. He's the transportation supervisor. And then Larry Lair, who is one of the mechanics and drivers for us. And Larry is standing next to one of our brand new school buses that we got in, thanks to the board for approving that, and to the voters for helping us keep our fleet up and running. This is an aerial view of the actual finished SAD bus garage and combined Cumberland Public Works building. You can see that plenty of green space in the front and lots of parking in the back. We never had sufficient parking for buses. They were always crammed together. And now there's plenty of parking. This was right before the buses moved back from being at the fairgrounds. This was a few weeks ago, but the arrow is showing the old bus garage. You could barely get one bus in there to work on it, and buses have to be worked on. We have 25 buses and they need work. A lot of them need work a lot. So constantly putting them in and out of that, the facility. So this is what we have instead. You'll see that the bay on the end is the wash bay on the right. The two bays to the left of the end are the transportation bays for the SAD, and the rest of the public works bays. This is the transportation office again. This was a few weeks ago before we're starting to make this slow process of kind of getting everything in there. There's a lot of stuff to move. These are the bays that the SAT is using. You can see buses comfortably can get in and out of those. There are doors on both sides so that the buses are not having to back out. This is a utility area that's up. There's a lot of storage up on those stairs as well. And this is our exciting part, right, Scott? So Scott and I took a ride, and this is, you'll enjoy this video, hopefully, maybe not. This is a bus going through.
That thing is like a hurricane in there.
Say how much water isn't there so many gallons of water or something? It's a crazy amount.
There is, and it is crazy, and it
Yep.
pushes up underneath the bus, so hopefully we won't get into the situation of, the rusty cross members that we have underneath a lot of the existing buses. We can get them washed off and taken care of, so. And there's also lifts going in those bays, which we haven't had the privilege of having before, to be able to get the buses up in the air and work on it.
Yeah, that's important. And I just wanted to mention that bay with the washing is shared with the town of Cumberland, so it's not just ours, so all the public works vehicles go through there as well. But I would encourage, if you want to have a visit, we can arrange for a visit down to the new facility so you can see for yourself.
Awesome, thank you.
Can the visit include a car wash?
Well, see, now I did inquire about that, if anybody can get a car wash, but I was told that is off limits.
Did they finally give you your busing license?
What's that?
Did they finally give you the bus license?
No.
For you to drive
I
it?
have been asked if I want to get my bus license because we have a class starting.
You definitely
And
should.
You think so? I'm wondering about my time, but I would like to learn.
I think
Quite
that would be like really, that would be a way to show the kids who's boss, you know? The superintendent driving your bus, that would be
I don't know.
scary.
I don't know, I think, I'm not sure who would be the boss in that case.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff. That was an awesome report. It's so nice to see that things are happening again, and life has kind of returned to
It's
campus
slow, but
in a
it's-
different way than there was.
We're
last
getting
year.
there.
Okay, so we will move on to committee reports. First is finance. Kevin.
Well, we continue to make sure every dime is being spent appropriately, looking closely at warrants and asking the right questions at the right times. We are going to be scheduling a finance committee meeting over the next 2.5 weeks, and we will be in touch with the committee members to ensure that those dates work.
Awesome, thank you. And policy?
We had our first meeting of the policy committee right before this meeting, and we were able to review our Title IX policies and Chapter 33 policies, both of which had changes to the statutes. So we should be bringing those to a first read at our next meeting, and the policy meeting will also be meeting right before board on the 1st.
Great, thank you. Curriculum. Jennifer? Or I'm sorry, Peter, facilities.
We'll be discussing those more in executive session, and depending on what comes out of it, we will be scheduling future facilities and probably finance committee meetings together.
Thank you. Okay, now curriculum. Jennifer?
We have not met yet this year, and we will, or this school year, our first meeting is scheduled the first week in November.
Awesome. Communications, Mike?
Our first meeting is tomorrow. That's
Equity Leadership Steering Committee. Ann, do you want to give an update?
Yeah, that's fine. We had a meeting Friday, thank you. Like we just had it. We have 4 students who were able to be in attendance, which is just wonderful. And we reviewed the phase 1 work that had been completed, and we're hoping to go with phase 2.
Thank you. Student reports. Avery?
Everything's going as usual. Vandalism seems to be on the decline in the high school bathrooms. So that's what's going on.
Thanks, Avery. I believe that's it. So we will now move into items for action. So first, I'm looking for a motion for first item, vote to approve hiring Lawrence Alexander.
I would like to recommend that we approve hiring Lawrence Alexander of Carney Santo and Associates on a monthly retainer agreement to provide equity support in the 2021-22 school year as recommended by the superintendent.
Thank you. And a second?
I second.
Thank you. And so I'll open it up for discussion. If anybody would like to ask any remaining questions or share any thoughts.
Jeff, what was the cost to do this?
So the cost is, it's a monthly retainer, and it would be $1,000 per month for 10 months, so $10,000. It includes an in-person, some sort of in-person meeting or event, whatever we're holding that month. plus all consults in between those meetings during the month, whether through video, phone call, email, et cetera. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just a question based on that. Is that a retainer plus meeting facilitation, or is that the cost?
That is the actual cost. There's no other cost. So it's $10,000 for 10 months. That's the cost.
Thank you.
Anyone over on this end have any other thing? Okay.
Then I did want to, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, please.
You know, it's always great when you get a lot of feedback from the community about challenging discussions. And, you know, I don't keep track, but I do read each of those. And I thought that it really shed a lot of light on an interesting situation. And being able to have that conversation with Mr. Alexander tonight, and it felt like a conversation, not just a push of information, I thought is very telling. I think you can pick up immediately how strong the gentleman is as a facilitator. Not talking about, not telling, but putting out the right questions and asking. And some of those other things that he said were far more compelling as a one-on 10, 11 discussion tonight. And I just got to tell you, I think that the gentleman will be an asset to this community. And I think that there's a lot of things that that I look forward to hearing from him in the process.
Thank you, Kevin. I just want to say that I feel like we've kind of hit the lottery with him, and I think that we have found Lawrence in a time where he's going to get very busy, because I think all schools are looking for guidance in the way that he's providing. And to know that he was available when we spoke with him last week was really wonderful to hear, and to make his time available this evening for our board to ask questions. I feel very lucky, and I think that our students and our staff and our community will benefit greatly from this relationship with him. So seeing no other discussion, I will ask all in favor. Thank you. Seeing none opposed, thank you so much. The second vote is to approve the adjustments to the Greeley Goes Green plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And I'll open this up for discussion or questions. Mike? And then Jason, are you? Okay. Mike?
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple, I think, quick ones. Just to clarify, I saw you listed about the change in cafeteria, eating in the cafeteria, and that's in response to staffing shortages. Is that the driver of that decision? What else? Just folks had reached out and had asked about why that decision was made. Is there any concern regarding COVID about larger groups? So just wondering if you could talk to that a bit more.
So at the high school and the middle school, we've been doing that since day one, and that had nothing to do with staffing shortage. And at Mabel I. Wilson School, some of it does have to do with supervision of students in classrooms, which we're currently doing, and teachers are currently supervising that classrooms right now. However, part of it is that we're also trying to normalize the lunchtime at Mabel Wilson again, like it used to be, and for kids to be able to see that. We're not going to have all students in a grade in the cafeteria. We have one grade that has almost 200 students, for example. So we're going to slowly, the administration at the school is planning to slowly schedule classes in. This week they're getting their feet wet with just a class at a time, a couple classes at a time, and then slowly go from there. But it's being done in a way that keeps cohorts of kids away from each other while they're eating. So if they're not in, we're not dealing with the contact tracing part, so they're in a different part of the room. But some of it's staff shortage, but some of it is just, it's time to start, moving along, and just reintroducing things that are more typical for kids to see. And eating, in a cafeteria, even though it can be loud and noisy, it is one of the hallmarks of being a student in any school, but in an elementary school, and kids, there's this energy that's just not there right now. And so we're trying to slowly normalize everything. High school and middle school have been, again, since day one, students have been eating in the cafeteria. Even our 4th and 5th graders who are not vaccinated, so have been eating regularly in the cafeteria. So They're really, for me, it's the vaccinated, unvaccinated situation or piece and component, because we've been doing this in 4th and 5th grade and we've had no cafeteria transmission that we know of. We don't feel like this is something that is a problem. I don't feel like it is.
That makes sense. The situation with lockers at GMS, has there been thought to, because I know, are they available to students to go to, or they're discouraged from going there and dropping their stuff off in between?
What was that again, Mike?
So lockers at Greeley Middle
lockers.
School, because a number of folks, my daughter included, have backpacks that weigh like 30 pounds because they're carting the laptop back and forth as well as a large binder and potentially other books as well. So is that just the notion of like they need to have the laptop both at home and at school, they need to have the binder at the same place, and they have to carry that around all day? Is there a possibility to utilize the lockers? Is this just something we're stuck with?
So Mrs. Trebilcock is not here, but she would be the best person to answer it. My understanding is, and I don't want to give the wrong information, my understanding is students can use their lockers. They're just not allowed to use their lockers all day long. So in other words, if there's stuff that am I getting that correct?
Yeah, and they're not locked.
Okay.
So they can essentially use them.
They're just encouraged not to go to them every time they go to a different class. In other words, go there in the morning, drop things you really don't need off, get them at the end of the day, but not visit those lockers, constantly during the day. I believe that's what Mari had told me was the plan.
Okay. One more quick one. So appreciate that you did a flu clinic. Hope it went well. We weren't able to make it. I'm interested, you had mentioned before about doing a COVID vaccine clinic, especially as we're seeing the inklings that this may come down, hopefully in the next couple weeks, that ages 5 through 11 can be available for a vaccine. Hopefully we can do that. And do you know about how far in advance we could let folks know if we're going to do a clinic?
Yeah, we are planning to do a clinic. I'm not going to say it's 100% right now, but it's looking likely that we will be providing at least one COVID clinic for students 5 to 11. Clinics will not be, if the FDA approves the emergency release of the Pfizer vaccine for 5 to 11, it would not be until November 4th, is what I have been told. Clinics would be able to be set up through the schools, through a provider, not really us doing it, a provider coming in, starting November 8th is the information that we were given this morning. So the Maine CDC and the Maine Department of Education are working with providers throughout the state to partner with districts. We already have a partner. We've used this partner prior to in offering clinics, so I assume we'll go with the same one. And we will be providing, hopefully providing clinics just as we've done before for 5 to 11, basically as soon as we can. And we had a meeting with the nurses this morning, Scott and I did, and Julie, and talked about that a little bit more. So it's in the works, we're discussing it.
Thank you.
Jason?
I'm curious if other board members are interested in breaking out the masking of the high school and making it optional, and if so, I would move to divide the question. Anyone?
I am, and I was going to speak to that. So,
right. So
I believe that we should carve out the piece for the high school and removing the mask, and also considering removing the mask at the 7th and 8th grade level, since the vaccines are provided and fully available. And I think in the report that Jeff had, that we're seeing that the numbers of transmission is very low to nil in the high school. And I think we need to give these kids a better opportunity to learn with the masks off. So, sorry to take your platform, but that was mine.
So I would move to divide the question then, and we break out the whole Greeley Goes Green plan, break out the high school as mask optional, and then 7, 8 mask optional, and then the rest of the plan.
Okay, so
I have some other questions, though. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we
Yes,
have?
let's finish discussion and then we can move to an alternative offering if possible.
Okay. I was curious, I've heard from the community how difficult it is when students have potentially been exposed or are sick, and the process of getting back into the classroom, that their home by next now test results aren't being accepted, that they need to have a doctor's note. Supposedly that some people haven't needed a doctor's note, and just, it's hard to get testing. If there's any way that we can make that smoother, that we could be providing do we have enough by next tests that we can just test everyone, and if it's negative, okay, they can stay in the classroom if they're not symptomatic?
So, great question. The nurses, we actually had a meeting this morning to discuss, this was on our agenda with the nurses to discuss, and obviously there's a lot of questions about this from parents, but we're also fielding a lot of questions and concerns, honestly, from our nursing staff around our practice in this particular area. So we are currently following the state's guidance on all of this, including doctor's notes. Now, there are some districts that are not following all of that, and we have been following, the process for doing that. This was asked of Dr. Shaw this morning. He answered it. His answer was districts can have some discretion in this area if you feel that you can. In meeting with the nurses today to discuss, is there some potential for using our discretion on this practice? One thing, and I was going to mention this during the presentation, and this is something I just got a phone call today from the CDC, just telling us that we have an outbreak at our 4th and 5th grade school, which I am sending a letter out tomorrow. I'm required to send it out as public information. So one of the things that when we discussed this, we felt like the outbreak, there is likely, and I'm using the word likely because we never know 100%, likely school transmission that has occurred in some of our cases recently, that we didn't feel changing procedure at this moment was the right way. We're meeting in 3 weeks, and we're going to review it again and see if doctor's notes is something, an area that we want to review again. But right now, we're going to continue following what the state has for guidelines on that. At least that's, that's up to the board through the GGG plan if you wanted to amend it. But at this point, I wouldn't recommend that we amend that. And I think our best practice in following state guidance is part of the plan. And we want to continue doing that, at least for now.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just had a related question then, is if there's anything, if we are going to, follow those additional steps, can we have better coverage of the class materials that our students are missing in order to have those tests? Like, so we have all this live streaming technology. Can we use some of that even when we're not like fully read in those other situations that we have outlined in the plan, where we could be meeting our students' needs better so that they're not falling behind and struggling to catch back up?
Yeah, I think that's what the leadership team attempted to do with the RED plan. So it has all the scenarios, like when some students are out because they're being quarantined. And what do we do next? For some students, when the teacher's in, some kids are in and some kids are out. So that RED plan does attempt to kind of answer those questions that we've had lingering questions around all of that.
I guess like maybe lowering the threshold, like how many students need to be out before that is enacted?
I mean, that's a good question. I think when we do, like for example, pooled testing, not all of our students participate. Some students are out. If we have a positive case, we've had that 3 times happen now. And then we have some kids in. That's where that plan applies. I think you're talking about a student who happens to be out because there was maybe transmission or they were exposed as a close contact in the community?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's, for those cases, the family and the nurse and the teacher are supposed to be working together on that. And then if there's a concern beyond that, if a student is out for an extended period of time, we've known of cases where kids are out for a while, for a few days. And we're trying for cases where that's happening. We talked to the nurses today about making sure with their administrator there's a plan for kids being able to return. How do we do that? We cannot provide, we're not allowed to provide by next testing, not supposed to, for kids that are symptomatic, and it didn't occur in the school. So in other words, if somebody can't get a test, their child is symptomatic, they've been out, the nurse at the school can't provide that test. Now, if they're sick at school, or a staff member sick or a student sick, and they develop symptoms at school, they can get a by-next test if parents give permission. But we don't have enough supply. That supply is also there for pool testing when we get a positive result. So we have been told by the Department of Ed, don't use by-next testing that way.
Is it possible to advocate, at the state level for districts to receive more by-next testing so we can?
I think it's a supply issue.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's tough. I've heard that there's just problems with supply.
It's also, I mean, I'll be quite honest, I don't think the nurses have the time to do it anyway if we had a lot of students coming in. Right now, our nurses are extremely stretched. And one of the things that, and I'm just being really honest, and this is something I'm going to be putting in the communication tomorrow, we've had some parents who have been pretty upset and have been, pretty vocal about that with the nurses. And quite honestly, the nurses are just doing their job. We're trying to keep the community as safe as we can, and just following the process and protocols that we've got in place. And I'm going to try to reinforce that tomorrow in the communication that goes out.
Isn't it? Yeah, I think it's also important too that parents need to contact the PCP as soon as possible too, because that's one of their primary care physician, because that's one of the other delays, is that when parents wait, it's that much longer to get the doctor's note for the student to be able to come back. So that's one of the delays that we've heard as well.
Thank you.
So Peter, I know you wanted to say something. I just wanted to add to what Ann was saying. We had a cold in our house, so we went through that experience of trying to get a doctor's note. And I will say that I 100% understand the need and trying to follow a process, but I don't think it's a sustainable one. For our physicians, for our parents who are waiting days and days and days to get an appointment, to get a note that they may not even get because their kid just has a cold and they're not prioritizing that at the PCP office, and kids being out of school again. So I do think I understand, and we were able to figure it out personally for our family, but it was my kids were out of school for a week. So we're all gonna get colds, and we gotta figure out a better way because this one's not sustainable. And I totally understand the position that the nurses are in because they have to follow but if there's ways to adjust that, I would love to hear it because I don't think it's sustainable. Peter?
A couple of questions. On the 25%, my understanding, again, you folks are going to renew that in November again, taking a look at it?
We'll look at, you mean the 25% for performances, events, and all that stuff?
And the athletic events.
Right, yes. Well, I mean, it will be up for review when we have the next advisory group.
I mean, I know the execution of it would be just impractical, but I mean, obviously now the local arts organizations, most of the major ones now, if you have proof of vaccination, you can come in. So I mean, I think, again, it's probably difficult to enforce at this time, but I mean, if somebody has been vaccinated, I just think the 25% is a little arbitrary, but again, I understand you can't have somebody at the door checking IDs, but I do hope before things get too far that we can take a look at that. Now, regarding clinics in the school, I assume that these students have to have parental permission, right?
Yes.
So we just can't walk in with a nurse, tell them, like we did with Salk vaccine, roll up your sleeves and go.
No, in fact, I believe the clinics will be after school hours, but we'll be hosting, and the provider, whether it's Northern Light or whatnot, would be our provider, kind of like what we did before, but students can sign up.
Okay.
So we're not sure. I don't know the details yet, but I'm envisioning that it could be like that. And then as to the 25%, Peter, So the music department, when they put forward the plan, they also put forward smaller events. In other words, not having necessarily the band and the chorus together, so a smaller group of kids. That means, you know, you can easily have both parents in to watch the kids and things like that. So it's not, you know, we're not having 100 kids in here and only a few people get to watch. It was, their plan was, you know, make sure the events are smaller, the concerts are smaller, so that all parents can come and can watch.
Will we be able to live stream those also?
Well, I mean, I think we can try to do anything. We certainly put a lot of stuff on YouTube, and I think the idea has been to put concerts on YouTube. So that's certainly possible. We have certain kids that opt out of things like that, so we'd have to check all those permissions, but it's not a lot.
Some of it becomes music rights as well.
Okay.
Copyright.
And we'll weigh in on the masks later, right?
I think the time is now.
In the gym, did you want to mention the gym? It holds 1,200 people, so 25% of that's pretty.
Yeah, I mean, for the gym, Scott was just reminding me that it's, you know, we're talking about 300 people that we would still be able to get in with 25% in the gym. I mean, I've been to different events, and yeah, we'll have 300 people, and other events there's, you know, only a scattering of people. It really depends on what event it is in the gym, but you know, again, this is ongoing. The superintendent's, county superintendent just got finished talking about this whole issue of winter athletics on Friday, and kind of setting some baselines. So this is all very kind of new recommendations that are coming to.
I think it's good that they're talking about it, and we're not doing it December 1st or.
No, and I will say that we're definitely having spectators in events. That's a given. We're definitely having winter sports, all of them. There's no sport that's off the table. That's clearly the MPI is very supportive of it, and it was really up to the counties to decide. The reason we even discussed it was that the county ADs came to us and said, what do you think first, before we even get, you know, far down the road talking about it as a group. And so that's what we ended up as a county. Now, the spectator limits or numbers are up to each district to figure out, but the players and their masks, that was a county decision. That's not one that we made.
Okay, thank you. Jason, did you want to offer a recommended vote?
Yeah, so, I mean, we can amend the existing motion, or I can move to divide the question. That's what I had proposed. So move to divide the question to break out the mask for high school as optional, as well as a separate question for 7-8 optional, and then the rest of the Greeley Goes Green plan as is. That would require a second.
So do we have a motion to make the Greeley High School mask wearing optional?
Sure,
Okay,
yes.
so second?
Second.
Any discussion? So again, this is for high school. Mike?
Do you want to go first, Avery?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. So, I mean, this is covering both, so I don't have to speak both times, but as the parent of a 6th grader who is sharing a school with 7th and 8th graders who is not yet vaccinated, hopefully will be in 3 weeks, and whose her younger brother is in 3rd grade who is not vaccinated yet, hopefully will be in 3 weeks, and who's currently with their grandmother who is dealing with multiple myeloma, which Colin Powell just died from, of complications of COVID. I am vehemently opposed to lifting the mask mandate at GMS. And I think it would be, I know,
Oh,
I'm speaking for both because I didn't want to say it both times.
It would be optional, correct? We're not saying everybody has to take their mask off.
It's the same thing. Yeah, no, I don't think this is the right time. I think let's get through and get the kids vaccinated, and let's absolutely address this by the November 16th board meeting.
Thank you. Avery?
Yeah, I want to speak on optional masking at the high school. I think that at this time. When students see each other outside of school, no one really wears masks. And as I guess it's hard to cope with that. Like, students still get together despite COVID. I haven't seen like anyone wear masks when students get together. And I think that wearing masks in school is just a formality at this point rather than a precaution. And I think that, yeah, it's, I don't know how necessary it is, because I think that, like, students, if some students are sick, they're going to get other students sick, even if, you know.
We also have to consider the teachers, and some teachers can or did not get vaccinated. So it's not, I know the students intermingle without the mask outside of school. Your immune system's so much stronger than what a teacher's would be. So I think everyone knows where I'm going with this. I think it's just too early right now.
And yeah, I think that's a really good point that I didn't think about. I think another sort of place to meet in the middle would be something like maybe making study halls optional for masking. Study halls tend to be silent, so there isn't a lot of projecting, there isn't a lot of communication between teachers and students, and I think that it wouldn't hurt to remove masking or make it optional for something like study halls.
Or at the very least, let kids in the high school get close enough so they can talk to each other or sit beside each other to talk to them. I mean, there's very limited basis that you guys can talk to each other, but okay, that's not. Go ahead, Peter.
Peter?
No, I'm going to be very careful that I don't, like the last time, run into a
Yes,
PC
please.
landmine.
Keep that in mind.
But I just think until we have decent statistics out of that high school, I mean, if I saw today that we had 95% vaccinations and this is the high school, I would be the first one to jump on the bandwagon. But as long as we're not getting any cooperation from the parents and the students about getting statistics, I don't feel comfortable as a school board member voting for it without some concrete information. And I want to do that, but I can't do it on the basis of all this, and I think certainly not in the middle schools until, again, we get into a vaccination program with the other people. And I mean, it goes against every grain in my body, because I really, definitely with the high school, want to see these kids off with masks. But, you know, the numbers aren't there, and it's too bad, but the blame is on the reporters.
Okay, Ann?
I mean, I was just going to say that I think, one thing that makes this so complicated is that we're a public institution. It's our job to make sure that we're keeping the public safe. And, worst case scenario, if we did have an outbreak or more cases and more students got sick and a student died, then what's the community going to say, and would they take any action against the district for not doing everything that we could to protect their student? It's an unfortunate position to be in, because I think, like Avery said, a lot of the mask wearing at the high school level in particular is a formality, and how that affects you, high school students on a daily basis. And it's just, I don't think it's as simple as saying we make masks optional at the high school, that it is just too complex. And that being said, I also just wanted to throw a note in that Peter, I wasn't getting on you about your statement because it wasn't politically correct. I was getting on you because it was a statement.
All right,
Okay,
let's just stay focused on the vote right now.
Enough.
Okay. Kevin?
Just a simple question, Jeff. What's the recommendation of the advisory committee?
The advisory group, and that includes students, parents, 3 medical doctors. Our physician was not there. Our school physician was absent at this meeting. They all, I believe there was not anyone that said that there should be a lifting of masking at this time. So I feel like we have, 18 people, I believe, were at that meeting, who were saying that this is not the right time right now. Not yet, not yet. And the other thing I want to say is I did get a message from the association a few days ago, and they said a majority of the association membership were surveyed and have a strong desire to keep the mandates in place, including masking. And I think that's important, and someone mentioned the staff as well. We have to consider all sides of this situation. I have had teachers personally reach out and say, I'll be very nervous in high school. Staff been working without masks right now, not yet. So I would say that recommendation everything on that side.
So the reason I was asking the question was just that piece is, there were a number of folks that were landed on a response that made sense for the district. I had written down the exact same thing on knowing teachers and staff. Their job is exponentially more difficult to speak in elevated tones from us. I feel for that. But if they didn't have to work, then they would have had to. But when I look at this, I think that the board trying to make a decision based on imperfect information when there is an advisor that is charged with making these decisions, I think that it just it shows a lack of humility on our part if we're telling the district, in this case, what to do for this decision. Now, we look at this information again in a month. We're coming into, again, a challenging time of year in terms of health on a good year. So I'm inclined to follow the guidance of the advisory group.
I want to also just add one thing about that. One of the doctors who's on the advisory group made mention of referring back to the data that we've got, and one of them is county transmission data, which is high right now still in Cumberland County, and saying that is always a metric you want to be very cognizant of because schools do not operate in a vacuum. And so I thought that was always a good point that he's made that more than once.
So I was just going to add that I have attended the advisory groups, and I will say that I'm beyond grateful for the medical professionals. They come out of surgery to come and attend our meetings. They are very dedicated to making sure that they are passing along the information that we need to make these decisions. And I also just want to recognize that throughout this evening, we were able to celebrate some things that we are doing again. Field trips and doing music again and winter sports and having people be able to come and see their children playing. I do not believe that now is a time to mess with the system that's making that work. So unless anyone else has any further discussions on this first item for action, we will go to a vote. So this vote is again making masks optional for the high school. All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. Jason, did you want to make a second motion?
We may as well follow through on breaking out 7-8 and then the rest of the Greeley Goes Green plan. Jennifer had asked for that, so let's do that.
Okay. So a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I feel like
I guess I would just like to say that I bring this forward because we should have this healthy discussion. It feels now very tense up here and very attacking. And I think that's a shame. I think that we should have these discussions and question the information that's brought to us, and that we as a board should be looking at it and making these questions. And I feel like it's very tense here and very, I don't know, not very welcoming. So I find that very disappointing. I'm not saying that we all should agree, but I feel that we should have these discussions and challenge the information that's come forth. And that's what my job is, and it's a shame that this is kind of the approach, that it's being looked at that way. So that's what I'd like to say.
Tyler?
Yes.
I completely agree, Jennifer. I have no problem whatsoever bringing this up. I feel strongly about that, and I feel strongly about the issue, and I'm going to share it strongly. So it's not an attacking on anybody personally for bringing it up. It's my opinion, and I feel strongly about it. That's the only reason why I came across strongly from me, just speaking for me. I am absolutely not opposed to folks bringing this up, bringing anything up, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
And if I can echo that, mine isn't an attack either, but it's, if we didn't have to wear a mask, I think that that would be delightful. And when I look through the extensive Get to Green plan that we looked at, things are moving in the right direction. And I would hate to have anything derail that potentially could be within our control. And when we do have I think that we should ask the question, as we committed to when this rolled out the first time, but I would always have a hard time acting against the advice of the medical professionals that are comprising that group.
Thank you. Jason, and then Tom.
I'd just like to explain my vote because to me, high schoolers or kids over 12 can be vaccinated, so that would be all of high schoolers, and 7 and 8 does not come within that group. So for me, I'll be voting backwards of what I did with the high school. I just want to explain that, sort of the logic there.
Okay. Tom.
I just felt like I should explain my vote and also my silence. I don't want my silence way over here on the other side to seem like hostility. I think I haven't spoken up because Peter already articulated everything that I wanted to say. I would love for us to be able to make masks optional at the high school. But at 54% vaccination, I can't in good conscience vote for that. So I'm really hoping that the next time we meet, we can revisit this again. I think it's great that we're breaking this apart into the high school, the middle school, and the lower levels. And I hope we continue to do this at future meetings.
Thank you. Okay, so all in favor for making masks optional for Greeley Middle Schools 7 through 8? Okay, and those opposed? Thank you. So we're going to return to the recommended vote. I'm looking for a motion for that.
So moved.
Do you mind reading the whole thing? Just because it does have...
I don't have the script,
You don't?
so somebody else.
Thank you.
I move we vote to approve the adjustments to the Greeley Goes Green plan, including the red plan as presented by the superintendent.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? And I just want to say, Jennifer, thank you for your honesty, and for the other board members for making sure that we're all communicating in this awkward setting as best we can. Okay, so our next item for...
You didn't ask for all opposed.
Did I?
No.
I'm sorry. What did I do wrong?
You said all in favor.
All in favor, all opposed? I apologize, Jennifer. Okay, so now we can move on to the next item for action, which is annual approval of MSAD 51 emergency plan.
I vote that we approve the MSAD 51 emergency plan as presented.
Second.
And any discussion here? Okay.
Well, actually, since I was the only board member at the safety committee meeting, I feel like I should at least say something. We had an energetic and productive meeting about a month ago. We're meeting again on Thursday. And I think we recognize that the the current plan is adequate for our needs right now, but there's a lot of work to be done that I think is going to happen over the next year, including some steps to make our plans more user-friendly for the people in the schools. So I'm optimistic that it's going to be a good, productive year.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, all in favor? And any opposed? Thank you. All right, and the next item, Jeff, do you mind giving us a little bit of background?
Yes, there's a letter in your packet from Susie Robbins, Director of Academic Services, and she is recommending tonight for the board to suspend the professional educator evaluation system, which we have in our district for a second year. Now, last year we got a state pass to go ahead and basically it was taken off the table by the Department of Education because of the COVID issues and not going forward with our evaluation system except for probationary staff members. This year, the state Department of Education has given an option to every district to decide if they want to take the evaluation system, which is of all of our staff that we have in our district, off the table or not. We have a collaborative group of members of the administration and the association that met. There's a group that's already in place, and Susie Robbins facilitates that group. They met and discussed the issue and recommended that we go ahead and suspend the evaluation system, except for those who are probationary staff members in our district, and that there's still fall goal setting, spring reflection, peer observations are encouraged, and performance evaluations would only be, again, for probationary staff. So that's pretty much how we left it for this year, or that group left it, and recommending it to the board. So the board has to then sign off and say yes or no, they agree with that for this school year. I don't expect this to come up again next year, but because of the continuing pandemic, the state did give that as an option.
Jeff, is this something that you would say maybe takes a little bit of a couple of things off of people's lists for staff?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will say it takes things off the list for staff in terms of there are different components that go with formal observation. There are meetings that go forward before and after that with the administrator. It takes a lot off of the administrator's plates. Administrators are doing a very different job right now on many days, including doing a lot of substituting and filling in, and quite frankly are not going to be able to get to the evaluations that are needed in this year, especially with the staffing shortage. I think just taking this entire thing off of people's plates this year is really needed.
I hope we can keep finding those things. All right, so
I had a question. Can you remind me what the appraisal year is?
So appraisal year, every teacher, for example, is on appraisal year every 3 years. So an appraisal just means that they have one formal observation, at least one formal observation, where the administrator goes in their room. Okay. And this is only for teachers that have been teaching here more than 2 years.
Okay.
It's actually 3 years until the end of this year. State law just changed. It will be 2 years. So that's an appraisal year. And then anyone who's probationary in their first 2 years gets appraised more than once for the first 2 years, up to three times or even more. Okay. Depends on the staff member and the administrator.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have a motion?
Tyler.
Oh, sorry. I think we're doing discussion before we had the motion. That's all. My fault. Go ahead.
So reading the memo, it sounds like the plan in place still keeps in the good formative evaluation, like goal setting and reflection, stuff like that.
Right.
Before we approve this, I really want to make sure that we're not taking away anything of value from our teachers that they might really need in what's been a trying time. Do you see anything here that if it's not required or it's not included this year, that teachers might feel like they're losing something?
So before we implement, this is a really great question. Before we implemented the current evaluation system, probably 3-4 years ago that we have, maybe 5 years ago now, we put in a whole new system for evaluation of all of our staff. We had heard from some staff members that they had not been evaluated enough, and that there was no regular feedback to them. And so that was something that, you know, we obviously wanted to make sure that we had in place. So I think one thing is that we're basically taking our schedule for, you know, appraisal for all of our staff, and we're just keep moving it. This will be now the second year that we've moved that schedule. That'll be 2 years out from people that would have been appraised last year, would have been appraised this year. Now they're, you know, that everybody's kind of moving out 2 more years. So if nothing else, I think the feedback that teachers get, I'm not saying that, you know, everyone loves having an appraisal year. You know, I think it's all over the board. It really depends on where someone is in their career. Some, you know, teachers are looking for new feedback. Maybe they're in a different role. It really depends, but I think overall, I don't want to speak for teachers, but I think overall, just anything we can take off their list would be great. And I know that, I don't know if you want to recognize Jason Curry, because he can probably
He's jumping out of his seat.
A little bit more insight on this.
Yeah, Jason, could you speak on behalf of all of the teachers?
I would love to try. I can say that this year we've had all professional development opportunities that aren't in-house professional development frozen. And so some of those opportunities are ways that teachers meet the evaluation towards appraisal system. So it would be super if we could have that appraisal system frozen rather than proceed, if we're not going to get those opportunities to do professional development at conferences and other virtual opportunities even, and instead not have those opportunities. So if we could progress simultaneously with the opportunities to reach our evaluations and also the evaluation system, and if we're not going to get the PD opportunities, don't move us forward in the evaluation system.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jason's referring to outside conferences, professional development, and we've had to freeze that. Not necessarily because of COVID, although it started that way because we needed to make sure that, excuse me, our staff were in the classroom, our teachers were in the classroom this year after 18 months of kind of disjointed education because of the pandemic. But it's also the second big reason is we just don't have enough staff either. And we are constantly pulling people to cover classrooms. So I think there's 2 reasons why we've had to go that route this year now. And I think it certainly what Jason said makes sense as well, is when we're not providing all of that. That does go hand in hand with some appraisals.
Okay. So we still need a motion. Do we have a motion? Anyone like to give a motion?
I recommend that we vote to suspend most components of the PEPG system for the 21-22 school year as outlined by the Director of Academic Services.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Thank you so much. And so our last item, a motion to enter executive session.
I'll move to enter executive session to discuss property acquisition pursuant to state statute MRSA 4056C.
Second. Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed?